Daniel, you seems to be on top of things. Can you go into that paper? There's a YouTube link. Just click on that and just write there in the comments, or just post this link if there is anybody still there. Because there are people there watching us. So they can now click and they can join us. If they, I have that piece of paper with the link, but I keep losing it all the time. Yeah, so no idea where it is. So while we're letting other people in, I have more questions, but if anybody else wants to start, it would be nice. Observation. Before I start with all my questions, which are genuine questions, you know, usually moderator prepares some fake questions so there's something to ask someone. But I actually have questions which I wrote down that are of great interest to me. So before we move into my selfish agenda, any observation? Because I've seen you've been writing things on the side when you were hearing different work, wonderful, moving, this, that. So maybe we can pick up from there.
So I wanted to ask Roxanne, where did you discover the tradition that you are basing your contemporary work on? Where did you first discover that? How did you find it?
Oh yeah, it wasn't actually me who discovered it. It was the post-workers theatre group that we were working with. They all live in Kent, so they've just seen it happening in Kent. It still happens there.
Did they know where it came from and how it got there, or was it just always there for them?
I think it was just always there for them, and then they were experiencing it, and so they started researching it. Yeah, and there are groups all over the country that do hoodening at Christmas time, alongside doing Morris dancing and other traditional things like that. So yeah, I think also quite a lot of the participants, there were a couple of people from Ireland in the show, and they had a similar tradition there as well. And in Wales, they have the Mary Lloyd tradition as well, which is very similar.
Yeah, exactly. In Ireland, there's something similar called the Grand Day. And then also in the northwest of Spain, there's also different versions of the Grand Day. And also in what it used to be the Esther Leones, like tribes or region. Also, there are a lot of masquerades. There's one called the Caballico y Pajarico, which means like the horse and the Gren. So there's definitely a connection between different regions. And also, I think there are similar in the Pays de Sol, which is in the Basque, in the French Basque country. So then there's a whole area that really comprises all these masquerades.
Amazing.
I have a kind of a question for Dan in response, I guess. I was interested in the fact that you're discussing like our experience of, our experience of the piece being kind of like almost where the art lies, or that is a really important part of the art of the creative production, is how people then experience it. And I just wondered if you could go a little bit further into exactly how the analogy of the rhizome. So as far as I understand, the rhizome is that point in the soil where the root is like interacting with the soil. So how exactly that is in your like interpretation related to that experience?
I think I'm really interested in things you can't control, in terms of the idea that if you make a piece of art, you're not conditioning or priming an audience to have a particular response. And I think that the rhizome, I'm thinking, how could I allow something rhizomatic to happen in the work, where an audience, somebody sitting in row K could have a different connection to somebody who's sitting in row D, for example, but then they'd still be able to, if they spoke to each other in the bar afterwards, they'd still be able to connect their experience to those different points, if they were encouraged to talk about it. And I like the idea. I mean, I'm still working with the idea of, you have to start a play and you have to finish a play and you have to fulfill a scene. But how do you keep the principles of aliveness and difference going, even within, the blueprint of a script? And I think maybe if you're looking to bring in ideas that can't be repeated, and are completely spontaneous and can take things in different directions for your actors each night, then you might have something rhizomatic. But then there has to be space, not just for the actors to experience something different every night. There has to be a space for the audience to connect at different points to it. And I think one of the things is just getting your head out of the zone that you are thinking the same thoughts as another person. I think even that is just where it starts. We can all agree on something. Well, we can all see it in a different way, and trying to find room in productions, or whether it's writing or even, I guess, composition or any kind of staging, would be really interesting, because the rhizome can be very disruptive but very creative. So I guess it has that kind, it's a tactic. It's like, it's like saying, just when you think you're going from the beginning to the middle to the end, you can put something in here that potentially gives you your own territory to kind of think your own thoughts.
Good. Thank you. Good. Roxanne, excellent. Dan, excellent. Nice synergy. You can take a next step to a pub. Really good. Now, before I start, any other really good exchange? Any other questions, please? I noticed the Juliana asked me, we're writing very positive notes, moving, wonderful, something like that. Can you comment upon that? Did they imagine that?
Yeah, I was. It's just I was really interested in Dan's film piece, and I think he already expanded on that now. So yeah, it was this idea of how the audience can. You said mutual becoming at the end, and I thought that was a perfect way of putting it, and that was it for me.
So you think that in that piece he achieved this mutual becoming?
Well, I suppose I'd have to watch the whole thing, but I saw what he was talking about. Kind of, I could see what the idea was from the small snippet we got, and it made me interested in wanting to watch the rest as well and research a bit more about his work. But I feel like I need to see more to expand on it.
I think you're a full thing, Dan. You can maybe send it, because we all have emails in the message, so you can stay in contact. We can pass this on. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that myself, because also if you ask me, we have been thinking how not just transfer something that we do like physically to remotely. And I thought really interesting about this rhythm context, like this rhythm concept of the layout. How maybe like if you give other perspectives of how the related audience, but also artists, is a way of still creating digitally or remotely, and not just transfer what we do in one way to other, but we kind of have like other ways of thinking since the very seed of the process. So I was definitely taking notes of that.
Okay, good. Well, you cannot accuse me for being too forward. Now I gave you time to talk. You talked enough. Nice me. All right, first question. Juliana and Yasmin, let's go. So that was a really, really interesting experiment. Basically, because it happens over time and also happens over distance. And, you know, you're making work like that. In the recent period, I've been involved in over time, over distance work. Roxanne was as well, with the Red Curtain Theater, 4, 5, 6 countries all over the world. And it's very, very kind of crazy way of working. But it's very interesting as well. It's kind of not straightforward. So the first question is this: so how did you transition from live to digital? You talk a lot about transition, but how did you transition? Connected to that is also the question: how is it different? You talk a lot about together and apart, but how can you sort of sustain that difference? How can you sustain that?
Yeah, I think I'll go first on this one. So definitely the first transition was, I would say, because of necessity. So that was what was happening in COVID, and we just want to keep going work. And especially because I think it was one way of keep working through for all of us. So the transition actually happened. I would say that we never questioned about continue to work together, even though distance. So it was kind of, well, that's what we have. Let's just keep doing, and whatever happens, whatever challenge happens, we just deal along the way. So, and luckily, we then discover what these digital platforms can help us. So even like how we place our cameras, or how do we deal with audio and all of that. And
which digital platform did you?
Sorry, I think that I couldn't hear the question. Can you repeat it?
Sure. Which digital platform do you refer to?
Yeah, definitely Zoom. So was the first. So was what I have been using now. But also we realized how, because we have time difference. So one of the main different points would be, Yasmin would be like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. and for me it would be 7 a.m. or so on. So a lot of the work was doing offline. I could call, so we would send audios, WhatsApp audios, and WhatsApp photos and references and all of this. So that's what we consider that's kind of ongoing research. What is really different when you get together to the same space, same time in a rehearsal, that kind of like you get there and you share everything during this period that you have. But as we didn't have that, so we also relate to how do we share audios or images or things that have been going. So yeah, I would say this was the major difference for us in the beginning, but after we also, how can we reach movements when we have this screen on and when we have basically 2D. So, but we also helped us a lot. How do we hear the other person? So we would explore having our cameras off. So how can I still hear Yasmin breaths or Yasmin steps and everything that is involved? So yeah.
Okay, so and Yasmin, then once you're together on Zoom, you show us some examples of work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you record that? Do you then make it a video, or do you do it live for the audience? How do you translate now this into production, online production?
Yeah, we do record it, but so the last residency we did, our interest was to do a live performance of 2 people in different locations in the world dancing at the same time. So that was our production, let's say, for that moment. But now we are starting to look at at a more interactive idea where we create a website. And that's where we will have recorded videos. And then perhaps as well, have some events where we can have a live thing happening as well. So we want to continue to play with the possibilities between the digital and the live. We just feel that there is still a lot to learn from it. And I think the main point of the whole work is experimentation, and how can we learn from it? What can we learn from it? What haven't we explored yet that we can look at?
Thank you so much. Roxy and Danny, you talked about theater as film, and then you talked about how do you maintain the theater quality in the film. But your piece, which I have seen in full as well, feels like a filmed theater. So in which sense this is a combination between theater and film? And in which sense this is a filmed theater? Because you could also go into a theater piece with a camera. So how did you put these two languages together?
I think actually the way that Danny did the music answers that question quite a lot. So also, Danny, you should talk more about the music.
So this is a chance for me to talk about the music.
Danny!
Well, the thing is that the music was created with the idea just to be performed live. So that's why there's a live band on stage. And then the music responds to what's happening on the play, and that's why this idea of the blocks of materials, the layering, and all these elements of counterpoint and polyphony in the different layers of meaning of not just the music but also the text, because the dramaturgy responds to the music and the music responds to the dramaturgy. So there's an interconnection in there. So then the moment that we were gonna film the piece, we had just to decide how to approach that, because basically we didn't have enough people to do everything, because the band, they were also performing as speakers packers, which was an idea that we had to do live as well. So the performers, the musicians also.
I need to stop you. We'll continue. Before Daniel escapes, I do have a question which I really want to ask. You talked about a synergy of dance, music, and visual. Is Mandala Manifesto, A, and B, how is that synergy different from any synergy when you put together interdisciplinary performance where you would have a music, dance, and visual? Or is it not different?
Can you repeat, because part of your question was not heard?
That's okay. So you talk about synergy of dance, music, and visual in Mandala. My question is there a manifesto mandala? And second question is, how is it different from any interdisciplinary piece where you put together visual, music, and dance? What is mandala?
Okay, so I'm not sure if it's yet a manifesto. And I'm also been thinking about, in some phases of the work, I was like, wait, I don't really need this. I have the dancers, I have the music. I don't need it. But the reason that I'm actually doing that, or the kind of interesting thing about mandalas, was first that it really evoked something in me while playing, especially in those moments where I actually, I'm almost drawing with the music. So I find a certain position, certain notes, certain things that create a certain symbol or a certain pattern that I enjoy. I just enjoy it visually, and then I try to hold it. So actually it becomes a kind of a game for me, beyond the let's call it aesthetic presentation of I have visual projection. I mean, today is at the same time, it's so easy to do so many things and connect different sources, and the sound to make the visual make that, and the sound motion, and you can do with your phone motion detection, you can do with a laptop things that are really amazing. But at the same time, you lose the meaning then for all of that, because you can, excuse me for saying, you can fart on the microphone and then it will process into a symphony AI made, and the dancers are like these puppets, robots dancing. Basically, this is
Or
where
you
we
can
are.
throw piano through the window.
Yeah,
and record.
exactly. You could throw the piano and do slow motion and process it in different million ways. And so, but at the same time, I'm trying to go back with this. I also use the SAS for that reason. I'm trying to go back to what is basically my first feeling, what is my first impulse when doing. I can philosophize a lot about what is this and why it's right to do, but I also want to go back to my first more basic feeling when I'm playing, and not to be only driven by score or by some developed concept, but really to kind of connect. That's for me the connection. It's interesting how the dance, on one hand, dance and music are obviously together. All styles of music depend in some way or another on a style of dance. Jazz music, today you go to a jazz concert, usually nobody's dancing, but this was club music for dancing, and so on and so on. Classical music in particular, all this contact is suddenly disappear outside of ballet, for example. And I want to have it back, and I want to have it free, and I want to use technology to help me bridge that gap, because when I'm doing it without it, I have to talk a lot and I have to explain a lot and to conceptualize a lot. And I just thought, okay, I don't want to talk. I want to have symbols. I want to have a language that recreates that feeling basic of musician improvising with a dancer, but in a way that it will be more clear, because it's obviously very hard to put people in that place. For example, here I am experienced that people who don't have that experience, to put them on the spot, and that's why it's going out of just art making, but more, as I said, more inclusive participation. Everybody can participate, everybody can join through some process, through some practicing, but that's kind of where I'm going to.
I think, Daniel, you have a methodology there. I don't think you should cut yourself short with this, because you answered to me very well, why is this not just combination between visual? It's actually much more.
Yes.
You talked about one thing spinning into another. So I think this is very good. I'm sure that Roxanne and Dan, because they're looking at you quite with the big eyes like this when you're talking, I'm sure they will probably like to talk to you or get in touch with you.
Please
okay.
be in touch with me, but I have to start working, and
that's fine.
and I will see you later in the next.
Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Mandala.
Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao. Okay, and so Dan, I'm not going to ask you anything because everybody asked you already everything, and that's good. Svetlana, do you have anything to contribute? Because Svetlana just did a very interesting production in National Theatre that was using, and she was like a main multimedia artist. It was some performance, I forgot the name, something to do with Tehran, and I think conference in Tehran. But it uses a lot of multimedia in an interesting way. And the director was Ivana Vujic, who unfortunately couldn't be here. Apparently, she got the fourth vaccine and affected her a bit.
Just to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, Ivana Vujic and I, we worked on a performance, Iranian conference. It is the text of Ivan Veripayev, Russian writer, very famous in Europe, and a lot of theaters are working with his text. And
it's not famous now that they're banning Russian lyrics all over Europe. It's definitely not famous now anymore.
He's living in Poland. So.
No, nothing. they banned Tchaikovsky in Wales. I'm not sure what he has to do with anything, but so it's crazy. Anyway, I'm joking. Continue.
But it's interesting. Of course, I will have my presentation tomorrow, but as I don't know, I can tell now a little bit because the performance itself is like a conference, like a scientific conference. So and it can be easily transformed into live theater broadcasting through YouTube or Zoom. So basically also video material we use and live camera we use in the performance. It is like Zoom conference, but I don't have material now. I will show you tomorrow. I have recordings and I will speak more about this fluidity of digital narrative and how you can change context and how you can work with the same information on video and put them in different contexts. Use them online or use them in a theater play or use them in a video installation. And each time you have different sense of time and space. And I wasn't today from the beginning in your session, but it's very inspiring, and I got some little cues what from each of you are doing, and it's very interesting to share experience with you. And what I saw, it's really inspiring.
And Svetlana, thank you. Svetlana is associate professor at interdisciplinary studies here.
I was actually Daniel. I was working also with Daniel More. He is a student in polymedia arts, and I was introduced from the beginning with the Mandala project. So I'm very happy that he's developing this idea, and Daniel really think in different media, like in multimedia. And he even comes to my classes with the first year at the Faculty of Fine Arts, and he draws. So he's a musician, but multi-talented.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we have a nice time to take a little break, have something, whatever. But please don't disappear, because I do need some people. And also it's fascinating keynote by Tom Gorman from Coventry, who actually started doing these things, such as telepresence, before the whole notion of Zoom, something almost 10 years ago. And they set up this telepresence, and they did projects with different universities. So it has also pedagogical function. The interesting thing, I was talking to him, they use Zoom like what we use WhatsApp when we work with Zoom. What Julia and Yasmin said, because I also, when I work with Zoom, we use WhatsApp. And this Red Curtain Theater that we also collaborated, they also work with WhatsApp. But in telepresence, they use Zoom. Not exactly still sure what how this telepresence works, because they're supposed to have a rehearsal and a project with the Copenhagen, but something happened and they never had it. And I understand when they explain to me, but until I see how this actually works, what I saw images and stuff, but what do you do? Only thing I saw is that there's some screens, and then there's some cameras, and then other people are on the screen, and you are on this side, and the camera is on you. So, you know, so it'll be a very interesting presentation, because he's completely into this digital performance. This is his, you know, I'm collaborative theater director. I work collaboratively. I like using interdisciplinarity. I love mixing things up. I'm not digital. I went into digital because of this situation. But Tom Gorman is digital. That's what he does. So it'll be really interesting to hear from him. How does he play with that? Okay, so he will be coming in about 23 minutes, 25 minutes. So please try to be back if you can.